Hey guys, today we are going to talk about the annotated bibliography. This is not a huge portion of your grade, but it is a decent amount that it could drop you into B range, and that's if you make 100. So you definitely want to do the annotated bibliography and turn it in. We're going to go over what the annotated bibliography is. We're going to go over how to use the databases and how to evaluate sources. So let's just get right into it. So, some things to remember. You need a total of 5 sources, and only 2 of these can come from articles or sources we used in class. So, the novels, I've been calling them novels in all these videos, the books that you are using, Ray and Kittle, those could be your 2 sources that you use. Or you could use Ray in one of the articles. You could use Ray and Kittle in another one of the articles, but you still need to find at least 3 sources outside of that. That's your takeaway, is that 3 of the sources that you include in your essay and utilize in your essay need to be sources that you yourself have gone out and researched and found. And with the annotated bibliography, the same way, 3 of those sources need to be ones that you've gone out and found. They must be used in your paper. You can't simply cite a source and say, oh yeah, I use that. You've got to actually utilize it somewhere in your paper. Reference it somewhere, reference something the author said, use a quote from it. They've got to be used in your paper. It would probably be best to create your thesis first before you start researching all this stuff. You don't have to. Everybody writes differently, so I'm not telling you by any means that you're required to create your thesis first. But I would recommend it because of the fact that the thesis is your driving force for your paper. And so creating it first is just kind of a wise decision type thing. If you need help creating a thesis, there is another video on that you are not required to watch, but you may watch if you would like to, that just breaks down what a thesis is and how to create one. I will say a lot of people, even educators, often think that they're familiar with a thesis, and it's been my experience with various students that they are not as familiar as they think they are. So I would recommend watching it, but like I said, if you're pretty solid on it, you don't have to. I would recommend doing it first, but everybody writes differently, so that's just a suggestion. What you should include in your annotation, generally an annotation should include all of the following things: a brief summary of your source, like the main argument, primary contributions, the main purpose of your source. It's not the same thing as an abstract, okay? So you just want to focus on what the purpose of that source was. An evaluation of the source. So I want to say one thing about this before you get started in this. This is not the moment where you're like, this was a terrible article, da-da-da-da. Remember, people have put a lot of time and effort into writing these articles and writing this information. So don't just go on the automatic blasting of the article. Be respectful to the writers and the scholars that have put their time in it. However, focus on more scholarly educational aspects when it comes to evaluating it. Is the information reliable? Is it source-based? Meaning, do they get the information from other sources, or can you look up their sources on the topic and where they came up with these ideas? Is it, like, who is the intended audience? Is it meant for high-level scholars? Is it meant for young children? Is it meant for the education world, the psychological world? What field is it focused on? Who's the audience? And what motivates the author to write this particular piece? Is it a persuasive type of situation, or are they just giving you informational ideas? What's going on there? Finally, a reflection on the source. This is where you focus on the aspects of the article or the source that you feel as though could be used in your paper, or possibly could be used for someone else resourcing or researching a topic similar to yours, or maybe not similar to yours. Maybe you evaluated the source and you don't feel like you can use it, and you include that information. How will it fit into your argument? Discuss that idea. And has it changed any of your ideas on the topic? Oh, I need to go back before this video starts, if I haven't already messed it up. By the way, I will say, when you're looking at your annotated bibliography, there is a student example. So please reference that. It will help you understand how to set it up. You can even go so far as to open it up and delete the stuff that's there and put your own stuff in so that you can keep the same formatting. But please reference that. All right, hey guys, I think this could possibly be the first video that y'all are actually seeing my face in. I've learned how to use some new software on my computer in regards to recording. So anyway, what I want to do is go through, we've already kind of been going through the PowerPoint, and I want to go through how to find your sources for the annotated bib. There's multiple ways that you can do this, but I want to show you the databases in particular, how to search those databases, and how to use Google Scholar. Because a lot of you are going to rely on Google, like you see it right here, and you really should not do that. So it's more, we'll be talking about it as we go through the PowerPoint and stuff like that more, but essentially you should be looking for scholarly sources, and Google typically is not the best way. So first, let's go to Blackboard, or not, no, let's not go to Blackboard. First, let's go to Texas A&M website, and let me show you the databases. It came to my attention, I want to say about 3, maybe 4 years ago, that a lot of the students in my class had never had any real experience with the databases. So I have gotten where I like to show them every year, because this is definitely something you should know how to use and work through and find. So especially if you become a graduate student. As an undergrad, you may not use them as much, although to me it's almost foreign, being an English major, the idea of not using the databases. But as a graduate student, you will definitely use them. So you need to learn to locate them and all that good stuff. So when you get to Texas A&M website, it looks like this. You want to go to quick links, and I've got to scroll mine down a little bit to get it to show up, but you scroll down and you find John F. Moss Library. So we're going to go in there. And right on the home page, if you scroll to the bottom of it, is the search engine. And this is a basic way that you can search and find articles. If I wanted to find writing across the curriculum, I always spell curriculum wrong. I still spell it wrong. Writing across the curriculum. Plus, and the plus sign means I wanted to look for both things. It's elementary education. That's a lot. That's a big topic. No telling what it'll bring back to me. So I, of course, will go in here, and I get a lot. Right off the bat, I've got this very large book so that I can access. I wouldn't necessarily recommend books. If you're going to go with books, I'd probably stick to single chapters. But there's no reason why you can't do that. And then, of course, you can scroll through the various possibilities that you have.
See you, even though
but there's other things that you can do
like your
that
face
will
show up
help
at the
you
bottom.
narrow your search.
So
Narrowing your search is very
just a
important.
second.
For instance,
It's
if I
okay.
wanted to specifically find only writing across the curriculum stuff, if I put it in quotation marks, it will narrow the search down and bring back stuff specifically. Notice how my second choice changed, and it went specifically to this and writing across the curriculum. Same way with this this third choice. My choices switched around and changed because now it's looking for that specifically. That is what that quotation marks tells the system, is that you want to find this particular stuff. Same way with elementary education, I could do it that way. Now, I will say, me personally, I've never had a large or a lot of luck with the swoop system, which is what this is. I believe this is swoop. Let's go back and look at the main page. May not be swoop anymore. Oh yeah, now it's WorldCat Discovery. But basically, the search engines that they have you use, typically, they don't work as well as you would like them to. Yes, you can find stuff, but you can find even more stuff if you are smart about it. Google Scholar is your friend. The best way to find it is just to go to Google and search Google Scholar. It's obviously scholar.google.com. And go into it. Now, what Google Scholar is in relation to Google is Google Scholar will only bring up credible sources and credible articles and things like that. You can switch between articles and case law, but there's not really a reason why you guys would need case law. So I would definitely leave it on articles. Then you follow the same kind of strategies, maybe writing workshops. Maybe that's what you want to focus on, plus journaling. Okay. The emergence of the journaling self-help book, journaling, a valuable tool for registered nurses, writing and embracing your life through creative journaling, small groups and writing workshops. This is probably what I want right down here is the small groups. Now notice that lots of things happen with this. For starters, I get a lot of information about the source that I would not get in just regular Google. If you were to type that same thing in regular Google, there's no telling what it would bring up. It tells me information about who wrote the article and what journal the article came from. This is from Issues in Writing. This is from Am Nurse Today. This is in Google Books. This one is in Eric, which is kind of like another search engine. And it also gives me other information. It tells me places that I can find it, other websites that I can find it. It gives me the publication information because as we're going to talk about today as we go through, publication time does matter. And for some of them, it gives me direct access. For instance, this one that I liked down here, I don't know if I'd end up using it, but the idea of the writing workshop, right? I have an actual PDF for it, and it's a .gov site, so it's fairly reliable, which we'll also talk about in our sources. Now, looking at it, it does look like it's going to be just a completely research thing, but that doesn't mean that it's not something that I could use. I can go through, if it'll overload, peruse it, see what all has to be offered here. It looks like maybe it is something I could use. There's a works cited with it. There's acknowledgments that tell me about the author, which is important for my A-CRAB test, which we'll also talk about today. And then it's just basic information that I can go through. Now, I noticed that it's 211 pages, so I may not want to use the entire source, but then again, maybe I do. So right there, easily accessed, easily found source for me in Google Scholar. And as far as when it was written in 2011, so still pretty relevant and works pretty well. Let's say that I find something in Google Scholar, but I can't access it, right? So we'll go to this nurses because it's kind of be writing across the curriculum. We'll go here. This is not something I would have necessarily picked, but, or you know what? Let's do this. I don't like this one as much. Let's do the reflective journaling, a portal into the virtues of daily writing. So I want to access this, right? So I select it. But then it brings me to this website, and if I try to open it up, now watch me be wrong, but usually I'm right about these things. If I try to open it up, well, look at that. It tells me that I need to pay for the access. Do not do this, okay? First, if you can't find the article, I promise you there's a million other articles out there that will be just as good as this article. I often run into this where there's just one article I really want, and I can show you options for that as well. But you'd be surprised. You can probably find this. So I'm going to show you or take you through the steps of what I would do if I was trying to find this particular article. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the title, Reflective Journaling, and I'm going to take the author's name, Portman, and I'm going to put it in this search. Now, I need to be specific about it. So I'm going to put quotations around it, reflective journaling, and I'm going to put a plus sign, Portman, because that is the author. And I'm going to search here for it because it is very possible that it will, and look, there you go. It brought me back to this and the full text and the whole 9 yards. I don't know why I'd open that up off to the side, but I can get the full text and I can access it. Now, this could have taken me a while to bring up. For instance, if I had just put, what did we put in there? We'll do it the same way. We'll see if it brings it up. Writing workshops plus journaling. Okay. So So I get some other stuff like it, but I don't get that actual article. And it doesn't mean that I can't come back in and search in Swoop or in WorldCat, but it does not give me that particular article. I also want to point out that the other articles that were brought up, which I really didn't notice at the time, but they're not articles you can use. Narrative, oh my gosh, gerontology in research and practice. I mean, that's really not going to be something that I'm looking for as far as my particular writing paper. So that's what I was talking about when I, was talking about the idea of Google Scholar giving you a much better search engine. It just does. Google is a better search engine. The problem with going to regular Google is that while it is a better search engine, it brings up all kinds of stuff that you don't want. So if you go to Google Scholar, you get that good search engine, but you don't get all the extra stuff that you don't want. All right, back to my other recording. Oh, I messed it up. Let me see if I can go back and go to where we were. I bet I can't. We were right about here, right? Maybe a little bit further. Sorry, guys. That's what you get when you try to stop in the middle of things. All right, I searched it, brought up this stuff. There we go. But sorry about that. It does not give me that particular article. Like I said, in my opinion, I've never had good luck just searching directly through here. I have to say, I typically go to Google Scholar, find my articles on Google Scholar, and then access my articles through Texas A&M. That is typically how I do it. Now, let's say I find an article that's extremely difficult to find. For whatever reason, I cannot locate that article. Like I get a message, let's see if we can find one. I get a message in the stuff saying, oh no, that won't work. You're not going to be able to find it in WorldCat. I'm trying to find one that would be less. But see, like, look, half of these have PDFs out beside them. Well, I'll just go in there and show you. So let's education and research. I'm going to skip forward for you guys just a little bit. So what I can do if I can't find an article is I go to the library, just like I did originally, and I go to look in the actual databases in the library. So I'm going to go, I can't remember if it's resources. Okay, it's resources. So I click on locate library resources, and right up here at the top, I have databases. Here in this area is every database that Texas A&M has access to. JSTOR can be particularly problematic. If you try to find stuff in JSTOR, a lot of times you'll get a message back saying that it can't be found on that main page. So if you go here, this is another way. You just find. All right, I'm going to skip forward just a little bit again, guys. I'm just trying to save y'all some time as far as watching in this video because it is kind of a lengthy video. I go back and I decide that I'm going to look for a particular JSTOR article. So to help you guys find it. JSTOR. All right, so this brings up one right here. And watch me search for it and find it. But I'll try. We'll try this writing for change, engaging juveniles through alternative literacy. So I'll go into my search. I can get back to it. And what was it called? Writing for Change, Jacoby. I think it brings it up. I can't remember now. Jacoby. All right. Well, it brought it up. Of course, it's not going to work with me. But let's pretend it didn't. Let's say that it didn't. And I'm like, oh, I can't find it. So what I do, because you'll run it, I mean, I know I've run into this a million times, so I will be very shocked if you don't run into it. Maybe WorldCat is better than Swoop Search, and so I'm selling WorldCat short. But I couldn't find it, so I go to library resources. I know that it's in JSTOR because it's told me that right underneath here. It said, I'm in JSTOR. Come find me. So I go to the database, and I go to JSTOR. Well, I go to the J's first. And Then it brings up JSTOR. So I go down till I get to JSTOR. I'm probably going to go with this.
I went with collections.
If this doesn't work, then I'll use the other one. I've got to log on. Next. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if that's the right username and password or not. I've got a lot of stuff on this computer, so it could be for my regular school. We'll find out. All right, so it logs me on, and essentially I go through the exact same process. Now, keep in mind, if I had a hard time finding something in JSTOR, I could actually go into a further advanced source. So this is Journal of Correctional Education. So I could actually, in JSTOR, look for that journal, which would narrow down my sources even more, where I come into this advanced search and I look for a particular journal, which right here. Journal of, what was it called? Journal of Correctional Education. Of course, I probably would only put in that information for right now. And then my keywords would be writing for change, and I'd want to put in the author's last name, most likely.
Notice that I continuously use the quotation marks through, guys. The quotation marks tells the computer, look for this particular phrase together. So I definitely would stick with that policy.
That's the author. And then I'm kind of ready to go. I've got everything I need. I'm not going to go through all that. Submit advanced search. Oh, I saw a zoology one a minute ago, just randomly. And we'll see if we can get something back. Or if it ever loads. All right, so there we go. There is the access to it and the source. And all I have to do is download the PDF, which is not problematic at all. I want to show you something else in here for your works cited information that's very valuable for you to know. On every source that you access, finding the works cited information is really a thing of the past. Now, you definitely want to make sure that your format is correct, okay? Because a lot of these pages don't give you the correct format. They use an old source reference. Like, for instance, they use the Modern Language Association 6th edition or 7th edition. Like, they haven't updated their system. So you do want to make sure that the information is accurate. You do want to check it. But one really cool thing, all you have to do is right over here where it says cite this item. You click cite and it brings up the MLA information. And from what, just glancing at it, it looks accurate. Then you click copy and you can paste it directly in to your stuff. I have to say, when I am doing big research papers and I come across an article I know I'm going to use, or at least I'm pretty sure I'm going to use, I actually, this is just me, I always print the article so I can go through it and annotate it and take notes over it, highlight what I'm going to use. And right then, in that moment, I go ahead and copy and paste all my works cited information into just a blank page where I can access it later.
I really do highly recommend that you guys do this. I will say, you'd be surprised when you go back to find an article, all of a sudden, what was easy to find earlier, you struggle with finding. So I would definitely recommend going ahead and doing this just to make your life simpler.
I do this to save myself time. So when later rolls around and I'm getting my works cited page together, all I have to do is pull up that kind of scratch paper and pull out my source information right then and there of everything I decided to use. And then I check it and fine tooth comb it, all that kind of stuff. You can find this everywhere. It's in Google Scholar as well. For instance, if I want to cite it, right here, you see the little quotation marks. I click on that and there you go. Notice this one is a little, did I click the same article? I did. See, notice this one is a little bit different. That's why it's no, I didn't. That's why it's different. There we go. But still a little bit different. So that's why you definitely need to make sure that you include all the information. Like, this doesn't have an access date information on it, and that is required. But it gives you the basic information so that you only have a few little odds and ends things to check. you don't have everything that you have to check. Same way here in your main like swoop search. It'd be quicker. We're gonna go this way, so I don't have to keep backing out. When you go into the swoop search and you find an article, sorry, I keep calling it swoop search. It's not called that anymore. It's now WorldCat search. And you find an article. We're just gonna say journaling to make our lives quick. That's gonna bring up so much stuff. That's so broad. But you find an article. It's very simple here as well. You go into it. Now this is an ebook. You check availability. Oh, I haven't done this in a while. They've changed it. Oh, right here. And right here is the citation information. And it gives you all the styles. Like, oh, and this one's updated. So, well, I think it's updated. It has APA 7th edition. Let's see. Let's look for MLA. Yep, this one's updated. So that's even perfect. But notice it tells you proofread the citation. So, yes, it's awesome that they give you this information. And this one looks pretty accurate as well. But you definitely want to proofread that information to make sure that it's accurate. But still, very good, easy reference for citing stuff and finding stuff easily and not having to go crazy with stuff.
All right, and the last thing I'll show you is how to find book sources if you can't find them anywhere else. I'm just going to skip to it because I kind of ran around in circles going to it. But how you access that information, it's the same way as before. Oh, yeah, I picked Kittle and writing beside her.
And put in the ISBN number. I can get to it. And it will give you that information on any book, anywhere. So if you go in here, right?
So essentially what I said was, if you have a book at home in print that you need that information, you need that source information, and maybe you're just not that strong at citing an article, or maybe you just want to make your life, easier, work harder or work smarter, not harder type thing. WorldCat is a great database, and I don't mean the WorldCat search engine, I mean the actual database to find any and every book ever. And if you know the ISBN information, that will be all you need, and it'll bring it back and you can cite it.
Go to databases. I think I've had a hard time finding this before.
I have actually, but I was able to find it quickly.
Yeah, there we go. Go to WorldCat. WorldCat is your best friend when it comes to citing books and things like that.
It is.
All you have to do, I don't have the book right here in front of me. Let me see if I've got the syllabus and I could put in the ISBN number. Because really and truly, sorry guys, the ISBN number is the absolutely best way to find a novel or a book of any kind. I do. This is an old syllabus, so it'll probably be for an old book. But no, right book. All right. So what I want to do is I'm going to search for it in WorldCat, right? Although this is not what I'm used to. We're going to put it in anyway. Oh, let's do advanced search. And I'm going to do the author. But I also want to definitely do the ISBN, which I can probably do up here. Yeah, ISBN. So I'm going to put in that information, which I've given you on your syllabus. And it can also be found on your copyright page of your novel or of your book. It's usually that on those first couple of pages. Let me check my number. 978-08-1411-3172. All right, so there's the ISBN number. I'm not going to worry about year. I'm just going to search for it that way. Let's try taking out Kittle.
Yeah, because Kittle is the wrong author. That was Ray.
There we go. It's because I'm looking for the wrong person. So anyway, I found it in here. So all I have to do is I select it. And then once again, just you click cite and it brings up your citations. Notice this says the 7th edition. So see how it has that print at the end? I don't need that information anymore. But I could still copy and paste it and add in, all the other information, in all honesty, for this novel or this book, I keep saying novel, for this book would be the same, because you wouldn't have a URL or anything you'd have to list because you have it in print. And so you just have to cut that print information off of the source and you would be good to go. Oh, and you would also cut off the city, but that's not included anyway. So there you go. Anyway, that's how you can cite stuff. It's also how you find stuff on the internet and how you use Google Scholar and the databases. I hope this helps you guys. So let's just continue on with our PowerPoint and talking about the annotated bib.
All right, so that's the databases. Now let's talk about how you evaluate sources, because that really does matter to you and how you do that. Oh, I'm so sorry I left this on here, guys. This is where I was fixing the PowerPoint. I left that information. I'll have to fix that later. But that's what we're going to talk about next, especially with your engagement activity, because of the fact that you do have an engagement activity this week where your goal in that activity is to evaluate some sources that you find. So at this point, you found a topic, you formed a thesis, you're started searching for books and journal articles, and you started searching for internet sources. And now you need to decide some certain things. What do you need to consider when you're looking at internet sources? Okay. These are some basic guidelines that I want you guys to use and I want you guys to adhere to as you are looking at internet sources. Most likely, if you're looking at scholarly journal sources, you're not going to have a lot of issues, but there are still some things in here that you do need to pay attention to. And I want you to use what's called a CRAB method. So a CRAB method stands for authority, currency, relevance, accuracy, and bias. First thing that you want to look at is authority. Who wrote the piece? Who created it? Who created the source? That really, really matters, okay? What is their experience in the field? What is his or her understanding? What are his or her credentials? Are they educated in this field? Or is this just like a hobby, something they do in the spare time that, you know, they get into and they love? Sorry, I can't get comfortable, guys. They get into and they love, but it's still just a hobby. They're not necessarily experts in the field. Who are they? To be more specific, is it a professor or a researcher? Somebody who's highly experienced, highly knowledgeable? If you're looking at a scholarly article or a journal, that's who it is. It's a professor. It's a researcher. It's somebody who knows their stuff. So they're totally 100%, well, you know, for the most part, reliable. Or is it like a general journalist or writer? Maybe they've researched the topic. They've got a lot of understanding on the topic. They're somewhat informed, but possibly they're not familiar with all aspects. I would also say that general journalists especially, okay, and writers some, they can be biased. You have to be very careful of that. It's very hard nowadays to find news media outlets that are not biased in one way or another. I know everybody screams fake news and all that kind of stuff, but really it goes on both sides and it happens on both sides. So please be very careful of just general journalist information and writers. I'm not saying you can't use them, but you do need to be aware of the shortcomings of the fact that they may not be as well versed in the topic as that professor, and they may be somewhat biased. Or is this just a general member of the public? If you're looking at a general member of the public, they are not reliable. Okay? Kim Kardashian is not a reliable source. She may know a lot about a lot of things, especially probably in the music industry and all that kind of stuff. Well, maybe not music. Well, yeah, her husband, but in the entertainment industry. But as far as your topic or a lot of topics out there, she's going to have a basic surface level knowledge. She's most likely not familiar with all aspects of the topic and 100% probably going to be biased in some way or another. Just because they're celebrities, guys, does not make them experts, okay? Currency is another issue that you want to pay attention to. Currency meaning not money, but how current is it? How soon or how long ago was the article or the source created or published? Anything over 20 years is not considered something that is very current and is not something that you want to use and could possibly be an issue. Now, there are some sources that are considered landmark research in the field,
and you can almost always reference them. It's kind of like referencing Shakespeare in English or referencing Sigmund Freud in psychology. There are certain people that make such huge contributions to their field that they're always a referenceable material, but they probably don't want to be your primary source just simply because of the age. You want them still to be a secondary source. The newer the publication, the more relevant and reliable it is, and it will incorporate the newest and most modern information on the topic. So while it may have been landmark decisions or landmark research, it may not necessarily want to be your primary source because a lot of stuff has happened since, now and when Sigmund Freud did his work type thing. Finally, when you're looking at internet sources, is there an update publication information? If you're looking at an internet source that has no update or publication information, you probably do not want to use it. And keep in mind, even with update and publication information, there's still downfalls, which we'll talk more about as we go through. Relevance. How relevant is the source? Meaning, how much of it are you going to use? You are only pulling out 5 sources. Now, of course, you can have more, but sources that you cite, you should use. And you don't want your paper to become too source heavy. You still want it to be your opinion. So you definitely want to weigh it. If there's like one thing in the entire article that you want to mention, maybe see if you can find that information somewhere else that you can mention it from there and use that source. Is it contradicting or coinciding with your ideas? You can, of course, use an article that contradicts your ideas. It doesn't have to necessarily coincide with your ideas, but it's something that you want to pick out and focus on, because you don't want something that contradicts you too much. All right. You want to stay still in your area. That being said, though, I get a lot of feedback from students where they say, well, I couldn't find my stuff. Guys, you are not going to find a source out there that's going to say the exact same thing you say. You don't want it to, in fact. As a matter of fact, if you find a source that has the exact same ideas that you are planning on discussing, you probably want to think of some new ideas, because with all research, you want to be original and new. Accuracy. So how accurate is your source? Is there any kind of editing process? Is there anybody going behind this person who's writing this and editing what they're putting out there? For instance, somebody's own personal page, even if they are a professor or a scholar, is probably not being edited by anyone unless that page is affiliated with another organization. Meaning, is there somebody else related to them, somebody else connected to this source? Because those people want to maintain their reputation, so they're not going to just let you put out whatever. A newspaper article written in the New York Times, while it may have some bias, I don't disagree with that aspect, it is going to be edited. It does go through an editing process, and so that will affect it. There is someone fact-checking and making sure that they're not just putting anything out there. And can you fact-check? Can you see if the information that the source is using is reliable? Do they list a works cited or give you a bibliography reference material to check their stuff? That kind of stuff matters. Finally, bias. Is the source biased? Nowadays, in our world today, it's very difficult to find sources that are not biased. Just because it's biased doesn't mean that you can't use it. You can use biased material, but you do still need to be aware that that material is biased when you're using it in your own work, because you, as a researcher, want to be as least biased as possible. So is there any reason why the source or the author might be biased? Are they affiliated with an organization that could cause them to lean one direction or other? For instance, if they're writing an article about Martin Luther King Jr. and they're the treasurer of the KKK, they're probably going to be biased and going to say negative things about MLK regardless of the truth. Or is the researcher title designed to avoid bias? That's another thing. Can you see in the source or in the article that the researcher has made clear efforts to not be biased? For instance, are they saying things like, we created this double-blind study? That's a way where they're trying not to be biased. Are they doing things like that? Finally, and really most importantly, what is the purpose? So the quickest way to typically, maybe not as much in today's time period, but typically identify a bias source is to identify their purpose. And then, even if they're biased, to identify their purpose also lets you know to what degree they're going to be biased. So if it is an informational piece, but about, I don't know, abortion, and they're affiliated heavily with Planned Parenthood, they're probably going to be biased, right? But it's still informational. So maybe not as heavily as, say, if they were trying to sell you a contraceptive. If they're trying to sell you a product, then yes, they're going to be extremely biased because they're trying to sell or persuade you into doing something. And that changes things a lot. So be aware of how biased the source is. If it starts getting too heavily biased, you really probably don't want to use it. Finally, some issues with the internet or Google. I know I've already addressed the idea about you really don't want to use basic Google, but I have students do it every year. I get it. You're familiar with it. You're used to it. So you want to continue to use it. It's simple. It's easy. I mean, that's the reason why I suggest Google Scholar. But I want to go over some issues that could happen if you do decide to use it and some things you should keep in mind. For starters, please keep in mind anyone can create an internet site. Anyone. Okay, anyone at all. Technically, my 12-year-old daughter could go create one. And it doesn't cost a lot of money to own your own domain. So you don't have to have any kind of credentials. You don't have to know what you're doing. You don't have to be experienced. And you can say anything you want. That being said, please keep in mind that sources like Wikipedia and YouTube are not reliable. For starters, if you are not aware, if you become a member of Wikipedia, which used to you could do for free, you may have to pay a small fee now. I'm not for sure. I've never been an actual member. But if you become a member, you can edit and help the site. They allow that. What that means is you could go on the page for JFK and you could change it and say that he was murdered by, I don't know, raving lunatics who wanted to free all Indonesians. That's so random. But, you know, they could say anything they wanted to about about JFK on that page. Now, granted, Wikipedia does have people come behind and check the pages, especially when editing is done to the pages. So it probably wouldn't stay up for very long before it was fixed. But that does not mean that in that small window of time that you wouldn't access that JFK page and be like, oh, look, he was murdered by raving lunatics. Okay. And that have no real basis whatsoever. It is not a reliable source. Neither is YouTube. Okay, not reliable at all. You should not be using YouTube or Wikipedia. For that matter, you really shouldn't be citing encyclopedias or dictionaries of any kind. Know your audience. Don't tell me the definition 2 words unless it is a technical word. If it's technical jargon, sure. But don't give me the definition to cosmopolitan or something like that. That's basic. I can look that up if I don't know it. Last, updated information does not mean the entire source was checked. So while you may find a source that says it's updated and have that information, that does not mean they went in and checked the whole source again. That means they maybe changed one word. Like when I was going through and making this video, I noticed that on one of my pages, I had misspelled search and was thinking as I was recording, I was like, ugh. But I have to record this whole video again, so I'm just going to move on and let it go. So just know that that doesn't mean that the whole thing has been checked. It just means they may have gone in and changed one word. Much of the information you will need citing the sources is often missing on common websites. If you get to a website and you can't find any information on it, you can't find the author, when it was updated, organizations it's connected with, you don't need to be using it. It's not credible, okay? Do not think that you can use a website where all you have on that website is the title of the website and the URL. You don't need to be using that. If that's all you can find, it is not credible. You shouldn't be using it. Finally, just a quick domain check that you can do to help you with finding reliable stuff. If it ends in .net, it's a networking agency and no restrictions are enforced, meaning nobody edits it. They can say whatever they want. Same way with .com, which actually is short for commercial, just to give you an idea there of biasness, and .org. There are no restrictions. Nothing is checked on those sites. They can put whatever they want. Now, when you start getting into .edu, .gov, or .mil, Those are much more reliable. EDUs are related to schools, organizations that have to fact check, have to put out reliable stuff because it's in their namesake. They don't want to become unreliable sources because they're literally pushing education. And .gov and .mil are both government organizations, and so they're typically much more reliable. Now, that's just a few basic ones. There are others out there, but just to kind of get you started. So as for today, what you should be doing when you finish this video, you need to complete your engagement activity 12. You're going to be using that A-CRAB method that we talked about in this video. It goes through it and breaks it down again for you. So if you didn't take notes, don't worry. You can look at the handout and clearly see what each one wants you to address. So you need to be doing that. And I highly suggest that you start looking for your sources for your annotated bib and your essay. Don't wait to the last minute. I'm a procrastinator, so I feel your pain, but please do not wait to the last minute. Finally, if you have any questions or you're confused about the annotated bib or anything that's coming up, please feel free to include that post in your E12 stuff when you start posting about your sources. Also, if you know the answer to somebody's question, please feel free to answer it. Okay, guys? I love it when other students answer and help me out and help out their fellow students. So please feel free to do that as well. I hope this video helped you. I hope you watched the other videos. I know this was a long one, but hopefully you'll watch the other videos and that will help you as well. And you can get everything kind of organized out and start getting ready for your final essay. See you in the next video.